Costin Alamariu, a.k.a. Bronze Age Pervert and author of Bronze Age Mindset, recently published a revised edition of his doctoral dissertation from Yale University called Selective Breeding and the Birth of Philosophy. One of the early chapters in the book talks about the Greek cult of beauty, which is characterized by its eugenics and breeding program, as well as a strict training regimen for its youths, which sought to create warrior scholars, individuals who strove for greatness and exceptionalism, who were strong both in body and mind. And it also talks about the Greek view of a higher existence and their disdain for the slave morality, living just to live, living just to survive. The ancient Greeks embody, more than any other nation in history, the profound connection between attention to breeding laws or practices on one hand and the development, even exaggeration, of human inequality on the other. Their culture is the subject of so much interest now, and, rightly or wrongly, they are recognized as the foundation of Western civilization. Nietzsche understood, however, that a modern would shudder if we were to perceive the real root of Greek civilization. We don't appreciate the immense cruelty and suffering that was necessary to create the serene, light-filled culture that gave birth to artistic, literary, and philosophical traditions. Modern views on morality and on society as a whole are generally influenced by the liberal idea that each individual pursues their own happiness. This is sort of an antithesis to Constan's view of Greek society, which believed in direct intervention to create higher beings of strength, power, and beauty. He who meets them all assembled would say that they are immortal and ageless. He would see how graceful they all are, and would rejoice in his heart when he saw the men and the women finely clad, and the swift ships and their many riches. Then follows special praise for the maidens of Delos and their song, which set the seal of perfection on this magnificent existence. This magnificent existence depended on ruthless methods of population control and pruning. Burckhardt, writing in the 19th century, adds that a modern has no clue about the immense hardship, cruelty, and pain that had to happen to create this radiant type of human. Simply put, behind this image of human flourishing lie generations of attention to citizen quality rather than quantity, which is to say, to eugenics, with all its cruelty, an orientation that never left the Greek world. Behind this innocent-sounding formula lie all manner of exclusionary, forceful measures, the removal from the city rolls of citizens who don't live up to the moral, physical, and intellectual standards befitting a member of the polis, the ruthless subsuming of village life to city life, eugenics, infanticide, sexual apartheid, classism, racism, the intense physical and moral discipline and rigor entailing mercilessness towards both others and oneself. Finally, and most chilling for a modern audience, force and violence. Slavery on one hand, and training for war on the other, as the absolute prerequisites of this type of society and this type of man. The Greek way of life depended on its people being capable of victory, through the ability to wage war successfully. Without this ability, a people cannot ensure their freedom and existence. A weak people's existence sort of depends upon peoples with power. Will these people with power allow you to exist? Because the power of a people, in this case the Greeks, sort of dictates what happens around them. Power is essentially control of one's surrounding environment, and without power, you are subject to the will of those with power. Power can be used to exert one's will over another. Therefore, power is essential to maintaining freedom and to ensuring the existence of a specific culture. The Greeks knew this and put such heavy emphasis in creating warriors, individuals who were willing to die for their city-state, willing to die for these sort of higher ideas, these higher ideals, these sort of heroic views on life which would grant them Elysium, grant them entry into the Isles of the Blessed, the place of heroes. You shall always be the first and excel all others. Your jealous soul shall love no one unless it be the friend. That made the soul of the Greek quiver. Thus he walked the path of his greatness. The pursuit of excellence, the desire to be proven the best compared to all other men, is the foundation of all Greek culture. Victory in the contest, or agon, is taken to be the demonstration of such excellence and superiority. The clearest and most manifest exhibition of this superiority was in physical contest, in victory in physical contest, and in the exhibition of bodily beauty. The aim was now to develop the body to the highest perfection of beauty, a purpose for which each individual had to submit to a methodical discipline just as severe as training in the arts, denying himself any personal manifestations of genius. This mindset of collective exceptionalism through individual action, which sort of contributes to society's transcendence to a higher existence, this is sort of the foundation of Greek culture and their advocation of arete, excellence in all things. This is what makes the Greeks a higher culture, which, at the end of the day, built the blocks which make up the fabric of Western civilization. The central institution of the polis was the gymnasium. The gymnasium was the center of Greek social life in the cities. The original meaning of virtue, or arete, is precisely this type of excellence in which superiority over others is manifested in various struggles, whether athletic or intellectual, but both having their origins in the military training of the citizen. Such again was how Critias saw the Spartan constitution, and Plato's Republic, as we will see, is argued by Nietzsche, and not only by Nietzsche, to be the best regime or idealization of the Greek city with everything non-essential removed, so that it is shown in its final manifestation in speech to be a project for the breeding and the production of genius. Greek culture is thus universal in the sense that it is the first culture which, with awareness of nature, that is, of biology, undertook to cultivate and breed itself into a higher form. The point of this book has to do with an argument that awareness of nature, the prerequisite of philosophy and later of science, is identical with awareness of breeding, or what we might crudely term eugenics. The polis is sort of the center of creation for the ideal Greek. The Greeks formed an ideal image of man based on rigorous eugenics through selective breeding and, as I said before, the strict training of the youths. Understanding nature means understanding that specific breeding patterns create a higher quality human both in strength and intelligence, thus dictating their potential for greatness and their talent to be able to go to those higher lengths, to be able to attain a higher heroic existence. Behind the Greek obsession with citizen quality, with excellence, with personal and generational biological improvement, lies the converse, a depreciation of the life of the slave, or more generally, the type of man who lives only to live, who is willing to survive at any cost, or who is willing to accept subservience to avoid death. To speak of superior and inferior ways of life is necessarily to deny that every form of life has dignity or meaning, but, in particular, the net effect is to deny that mere life has any worth. The life of the slave sort of mirrors Nietzsche's idea of the last man. The concept of higher existence is foundational in the origins of right-wing philosophy. The idea of will to power and master morality advocated by Nietzsche differentiate the powerful and the beautiful from the weak and the ugly. In Bronze Age Mindset, Costin, or Bronze Age Pervert, speaks of noble peoples and noble animals. A noble animal will not mate in captivity. The noble peoples, on the other hand, will never accept slavery. They are either victorious or die free. Right-wing philosophy is the belief that the exceptionalism of certain higher men grant them privileges by right of their power. If one can speak of one type of life being superior and another being inferior, it's only a few steps to this conclusion. For this reason, Nietzsche begins his early essay on the Greek state by pointing out that the Greeks would have rejected as vile lies and cant our modern ideas of the dignity of human life and the dignity of labor. Labor, as the mere maintenance or preservation of mere life, has no value in and of itself, because mere life has no value. The fundamental Greek insight is the nihilistic insight of Silenus. Better never to have been born, and if born, to die as soon as possible. Mere life, a drudgery and bleak terror, is not worth the trouble. This is, fundamentally, where speculations about breeding, about human inferiority and superiority ultimately lead. And it may be argued, maybe by a cynic, that this is maybe the most profound reason that speculations about human inequality are so painful to modern people and outrage our moral sense. The second and related reason ideas of human breeding and human inequality make us feel uncomfortable is easier to understand and has already been mentioned. It is a radical denial of every principle on which we base our morality of egalitarianism and our democratic politics. Modern egalitarianism and the foundation of left-wing belief argues for the universal equality and value of men. It advocates for equal social representation and denies the right-wing foundation of a higher man that possesses greater privileges by right of power and exceptionalism. The idea that selective breeding or eugenics can sort of create individuals with greater talent and potential goes against the morality of the left. The inequality of nature, whose gifts or curses dictate the quality of an organism's existence, is not recognized by leftist thought, hence sort of contributing to this victim mindset that's so prevalent in modern progressive society. To conclude, the Greeks believed in an ideal form of man who reaches the highest levels of excellence, physically and mentally. The Greeks believed to perfect this form, selective breeding, eugenics, along with regimented training, is necessary. To create the heroic ideal, great sacrifice is required. In Sparta, babies were thrown off cliffs if they were deemed even slightly genetically weak or insufficient. In Greece, it was either kill or be killed when city-states went to war, when the Persians invaded. It was not just this picture that we have in modernity of these flourishing people with arts and culture. Almost every single one of your favorite philosophers was a soldier. Socrates, Plato, Xenophon, all the great philosophers in Greece were also soldiers because everybody had to know how to fight. Everybody had to fulfill their obligation as a citizen of a city-state. And what this means is the requirement for savage excellence in a society and in its individuals. This means not everyone can just pursue their own ends, because to pursue your own ends, to have the freedom to pursue your own ends, you first have to be strong and powerful enough to ensure your freedom and existence, to be able to seek those things, to be able to pursue those things. And this is the idea that we see in Greek society. A specific breeding program, eugenics program, a specific way of training the youth to prepare them for the savagery of nature, to prepare them for the worst case scenarios, to either fight in war or to debate and practice rhetoric in the polis. They were prepared for everything. They were prepared to be the most excellent and exceptional beings possible. And this is arete. This is what makes the Greeks so interesting and so integral into how Western civilization ends up and how it ends up flourishing and sort of dominating the world for several hundred years. This is The Warrior Philosopher, building the foundations of the warrior philosophy. We'll see you next time.